Today, we are really diving beyond the surface with Nicola Navon, and she is a communication and leadership coach. She's a speaker, and most importantly, she is an expert on masculine and feminine dynamics. And you will see that through this conversation. We are really diving in and unpacking this conversation around feminine and masculine energy. And there is just so much to unpack in this. And we really talk about why it's essential to heal the masculine in order for you to really step into your femininity and vice versa. And how powerful it is. And so there is so much that we riffed on in this conversation. So grab a pen and paper, grab a coffee, grab a cup of tea, a cup of cacao, and let's dive in. When you go beyond the surface and into the depths of who you truly are, you will rise. Nicola, welcome to the podcast. I am so deeply honored to be in conversation with you. I know this is going to be just a very potent conversation filled with so much of your wisdom and genius. So first and foremost, thank you. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley Ann. I am so thrilled to be here.
And you know what? I'm going to add one more piece. I'm actually just so deeply grateful that we crossed paths and have connected, because also just being in your energy and seeing the things that you share land so deeply. And I know that if it lands for me, it's going to land for people that are on this journey of growth and transformation. I know it's going to land deeply about this conversation of diving into our masculine energy and our feminine energy, which is, you have so much wisdom on this topic of conversation. And so, the place that I really would love to begin is first and foremost, what is true masculinity and femininity? And maybe what are some of those misconceptions that we have about these two?
Yeah, such a good question, Ashley Ann. And I love this because it's going to help us really set the stage to understand these dynamics, the interplay of these dynamics. And so, the way I want us all to think about the masculine and feminine is first their energies. And so we all have different levels of masculine and feminine energies pending our childhood. So, pending your early experiences in life and those reactions to maybe the primary caregivers in your life that impact which energies you lean more into, and pending your life and where you are in your life. So, for example, if you're starting a business, maybe you're heavier in your masculine because you're creating, you're building your structures. Yeah, maybe if you are doing a yoga certification and you're learning, you're heavier in your feminine because you're soaking up. You're not doing outward in the world, but you're more focused in being, in learning in your feminine. So also your life journey will impact where you are with your energies. Now, I want you, for those of you listening, think about your masculine energy. It's your outward energy. It's your action oriented energy. So that could be first, your masculine is your stability as well. So it's your groundedness. It's roots of a tree holding you safe in who you are, what you're about, what your values are, what's important to you. Now that helps inform this outward energy into the world. What's my mission in the world? What's my purpose? What do I stand by in partnership? That's like asserting my boundaries, asserting of my desires. It's the expression of the voice. Now, contrasting that with the feminine is our yin, it's their inwards. Now, before we go into the outward expression of the world, who am I? What do I stand for? I need to go in. I need to go into my feminine. I need to feel what is true. What do I care about? What's aligned for me? And it's through that going inward, that reflecting, that then we're able to express out in the world. Same in partnership. I'm going to go in from this. Let's say you had a conflict with your partner to make it real tangible. You need your feminine to go in. How do I feel about this conflict? How do I feel we should relate when we're out in public in front of a group of people. Ooh, actually, partner, like I noticed you talked negatively about me or made a joke at my expense, but that doesn't feel good in my soul. And that's what I know from reflecting. So then I use my masculine, hey, partner, I'd appreciate when we're out in public that we speak highly of each other because that kind of relationship would feel good for me. That's something I value. And you use your masculine to assert it. And so the feminine is that going in, it's that reflection that then empowers the masculine to express. And then the last things, there's many different traits and we can converse about it, but I'll say you can also liken that feminine to the flow, right? So the masculine's that direction. This is my direction. This is my dharma in life. Yet I'm going to surrender to you, God, source, universal energy, or whatever you want to call it, as to how it unfolds. And I'm going to not attach to the path of how, but I'm going to be open in my feminine to synchronicities, to things that come, to going in this non-linear path to getting there.
Oh my gosh, I could just hear you talk about it. I'm telling you, talking to you and reading the things that you share and that you post, it feels like the exact same. And I'm just like, yep, more please, keep going. I love it. I love it. And I think my biggest, like, maybe just like biggest aha in this moment as we're talking about it is just the piece around the inward part and how that comes first. That's such a really powerful piece. And for some reason, I think too, I've been really learning about creative alchemy lately. And I think you just added this layer of understanding because in it we've talked a lot about like planets and all of this, and there's so much to grasp. But it's just very interesting. Everything has both this masculine and feminine energy, and just I also am thinking about in also thinking about seasons too. It's like, winter being that season of, the inward. I don't know. Yeah. It's just like, I think that's where my brain was
Yes.
going with that too.
Yes, I love this, Ashley, and the cyclicality of it all. And how do we allow ourselves to be in winter? Winter is that time of going inwards, that time of reflection. Fall is that time of we shed, we release what doesn't serve us. Spring is usually, and we can have these different phases in our business, and it can last in our business, in our life, in our relationships, and it can last for different periods of time as well. But being conscious, what phase am I in? And spring is usually when okay, all the new things are shooting up from the ground. So maybe you're just starting to launch a new program in your business, or maybe you're nurturing a new aspect of your partnership. There's a new area of your partnership you're working on. And then summer people are always out, right? They're out and about. So summer is usually the height of like everything is coming to fruition in summer. So in business, maybe that's when all your programs are full steam. Relationship, it's like all the deep work that we've done. Maybe this period of separation that we've been in, or period of disconnection, because that happens in partnership. These ebbs and flows, emotional disconnection or physical disconnection. But in that time of summer, the passion's high, the intimacy is deep. You're going out, you're doing things, you're having fun together, wild adventures. And it's like letting that be and honoring both the masculine and feminine, right? The sun and the moon, the light and the day, right? And we all come to the darkness to be reborn. So, how do we honor this part of our lives and use the interplay of these energies, these dance of the masculine and feminine to support us?
Yeah. That is the like beautiful part, and also the most challenging I find for us is the honoring of it, the surrendering to it. We have such a hard time. I know, for speaking just from personal, it's hard to feel like you are in kind of like an inward season. And unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, but with social media, seeing people that are in complete contrast to where you are, like that's where I feel like we have to be more mindful of our own practices, our own boundaries with the consumption of things so that we don't go down this downward spiral and we just start trying to force, because nothing good comes from that forcing energy. And I can almost guarantee to anyone listening to this, you can pinpoint those periods and moments in your life, whether it's relationship, whether it's business, whatever that looks like, those periods and moments when you're trying so hard to force something to happen versus when something just happens so effortlessly and so naturally. you can feel the difference. You can feel just how things like you're like, wow, this worked out so easily. It was so easy to bring this into fruition versus why is this not working for me? And that's the hard part.
You know, I love this topic, Ashley Ann, because this is actually something that I've been thinking about today in my own life is I feel, for those of you listening as well, and you'll feel this, but it's such an interesting dance of humanity of how do we feel sometimes? When is this an opportunity for me to persevere? And when is this an opportunity to surrender? And it's also this like sensitivity, this dance of navigating life's challenges as human beings. And how do we do it with a sense of ease? Because I love what you're saying. It should never be this forcing energy. And I think that forcing energy comes because first, we're conditioned as our society with this unhealthy masculine energy. The world is conditioned that way of control. We think we can control people, circumstances. So relinquishing control feels so challenging. That's why being in the mystery, being in the unknown is such a challenge. I love to see you nodding because I know you obviously know this. And it's like, it's also something when I've been working through a challenge of my own, in my own life, and having this discernment as to is it challenging my ability to have faith and to trust and to persevere, and or because it could even be both, is it also like universal guidance and redirection? And so this requires this balance also of the masculine and feminine, because on our feminine side, like it's really tuning into the intuition, like what feels true, what's in alignment, like what's happening here. Is this something like a message that I'm supposed to receive? Is there a new path I'm supposed to go? And then using the masculine to, okay, I'm going to try this and see if maybe there's more ease in this direction. I'm going to just take little steps to do different things to see what unfolds.
I feel like in ways we're not even fully talking about what's going on in our personal lives, and I feel like there's alignment because I feel that so deeply, and it's a challenge. It's hard to be able to, um, I guess, just like honor both sides of it, or just be able to fully like surrender and listen and allow ourselves that space. I That's what I find as is challenging, or just to, yeah, just to be able, the way you described it about, is this redirection, or is this, you know what I mean? Is this calling me to persevere? Is this calling me for redirection? And and it's hard to know which one is right. I'm curious if you even have an answer to this. Like, have you been able to kind of, uh, lack of better words, figure out either or?
Such a good I'm still working through it, but what I will say with that, what's come came for me is this element of play. This is why I love this element of play of how can I just like, okay, I don't have to have, because it still comes from I need to know what's right or wrong here.
Yeah.
And instead, like, can I just explore? Can I dip a toe in this area and then see if maybe there's less resistance with the universe, more things open here? And can I dip a toe in this area and just see what comes? And let it be this dance of like, I'm going to play with you, universe, just like I do in partnership. I'll elaborate on the partnership in a moment, but like, I'm going to play with you and see what comes. And so it's that balance of like, it's an active role to play and to explore. I'm going to do the things, putting myself out there in these ways. I'm going to take these kinds of risks in my life and show me what's aligned by like, okay, if it keeps being this challenging journey, like I shift direction in this way. And how I liken this with partnership is, let's say, because energy feeds energy. So if, let's say, partner gets home and they're in a mood and maybe I just cooked them a nice meal and I'm feeling in a good mood and I wanted to have a little bit of sexy time and some intimacy, but they just want to watch TV or not even really talk to me much. How do I play with it? Since like, oh, well, I see like you're not looking to connect, huh? But I had a really sexy meal planned for us. And just at least give me one highlight of your day. What's the best thing that happened today? I'll tell you one about mine. Like finding ways to like engage them and just play with them and see, does my energy shift their energy? Does that shift the collective energy? And how do I not get so like wounded by a rejection, but I'm just going to play with it back? Or, if I'm feeding my partner, and maybe they're like, "What are you, my mother?" But I'm trying to be all sexy. Then how do I just like play with it? Oh, I see. Well, actually, no, I had this amazing bite of chocolate and I was going to kiss you after, but I guess you don't want that, do you? Like, getting a little spice back, right? Like finding ways to just play. And that'll also help, shift the direction of the dynamic.
It's so interesting that that came through for you in this, in me asking you, because that's like my brain was already going there because there's so much fun in, I guess, like the not taking things seriously is kind of how I like to look at it, of just allowing yourself to play, allowing yourself to simply explore. And I think sometimes, and I'm just going to speak, I guess, maybe for a moment to like entrepreneurs and those that are in this like space of building their business and actively going through this. I feel like it's really a deep challenge for us because we have the big dreams. There's so many things that we want to do. And yeah, we get very wounded by rejection, things not going our way. And so, how can we simply use everything as information and everything as a playground instead of looking at as, I think it's like this pressure that we put sometimes on something that is supposed to be fueling with you with so much love and creativity and passion, and we throw in the mix of like the strong masculine of like the numbers and the results, and it's like we got to find this little dance of both and bringing both into it. But I think when the play is lost and that joy for simply exploring is an opportunity to go inward and reflect. At least, like, I'm truly speaking from my own journey over the last 2 years specifically. Like, I've been building my business for 5 years, especially like my publishing business. And
Yeah.
the last 2 years, there was just a lot of like endings and beautiful things and just beautiful opportunities to go to reflect and just come back to play and come back to simply just exploring and trying different things and just not making a big deal if something didn't quote unquote go my way. That's kind of where I'm at with that. Like the exploring part, like we lose that excitement and joy and play in that.
Yes. And like this makes me think about like the vibrancy of the feminine. But this is a feminine energy, by the way. Anyone can have vibrancy, but like vibrancy of the feminine energy is that sense of play. It's actually not youthfulness like many may think it is. And as a society, we've sexualized youth in a way, but it's not youth. It's actually vibrancy, and it's that playfulness. I'm going to explore something. I'm going to be feisty back. I'm going to ask a curious question because I want to know the answer. And how do we bring that into our business of just like, okay, we are entrepreneurs, we have a vision, we have a dharma, we've got a path, and we're also here as human beings to live this life experience and play and to learn and to grow. And so how do we not lose, we keep that plan of the dharma, that vision, that seed, and also have faith and have fun in the process.
Yeah. That's been like the big, at least for me, like lately, is just this realization, especially recently over the weekend, of just, living in kind of like a narrative that I feel like wasn't serving me for so long. And finally, having this conversation with someone, and really finally feeling liberated in a way from this narrative. And that we're talking like something from childhood that's been playing in the background. And now I'm just in that space of like, fuck it. I want to play. I want to live. Like, I am not here to be in this space of constantly putting myself down because I haven't achieved XYZ. And just finally being in a space of just like, it's time to play. And it's time to just like follow the gut, follow my gut, and do the things that are just bringing me so much joy, and not thinking about, not always attaching an outcome to it. And I will, just one little piece to say, and I'll let you kind of chime in on this, is I also recognize that I have a full-time job and that gives me stability. And so it allows me a little bit more safety to play in my business and as I grow my business. So I'm also recognizing that. And that's where I just want to highlight that as well for those that might not necessarily be in the same situation as me.
I love that highlight because that is the masculine. That job is providing that safety, that stability to allow your feminine to play. And when you don't have that sense of masculine, that anchor, that core, those like roots of a tree, that groundedness, and whatever it is for you listening, but usually like money, we live in a world that money is currency. So it does add value to have stability from a financial perspective, and that it makes more way for you to explore, because if you're just living on a fight or flight and survival mode, you're not going to be able to play.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
And then one
go
last
ahead.
thing though that you said that I thought about, I know we're going crazy ripping here, I'm
Yeah.
loving it. Uh, it comes back for me of when you talk about non-attachment. What I love so much about non-attachment is it really all comes back to union with self. This is why I also love marrying of the energies, because it's I don't attach to you, partner, for my wholeness. I don't attach to you, job, to validate my worth. I don't attach to you, money, to validate what I do in the world. And it's like, how do we continue to source that from within? Because we all are divine beings from within, and our worthiness is innate. And of course, like doing things to cultivate our minds so that we feel good and feel valuable by doing things that nourish us in healthy ways is essential, but it's like none of that needs to be sourced externally, even though we live in a world that tells us it is. So that's why we get so hard on ourselves as human beings.
Yeah, and I will say going back to what we were talking about with the feminine, the inward, I for the last like I want to say year, maybe almost 2 years, it was a very intentional journey for me to say I'm not going to invest in other like coaching and things like that, just things that were in a way kind of not that they were wrong, not that they were bad. It's all valuable. It's just you really have to take time, I think, to look at where is it coming from and why am I always feeling like I have to invest in something? And I've said this a lot over other conversations on the podcast, but just how by doing that, we're constantly giving up our power because we're saying that I don't know the answer to this. And then I think there's this dance of just it comes down to, why we're investing into something. And if it feels like it's kind of coming from this place of lack and from, well, I need this in order to receive this, that's the question mark piece. And that for me was I noticed that that was happening a lot. And so now when I'm making an investment, and especially the last few investments that I've made have been so deeply aligned. And because I took that space to kind of just intentionally say, I'm not going to invest outwardly and I'm going to invest in my connection to myself, my higher self, my guides, my ancestors. Like, I want to build this connection. I want to know me. I want to just build that confidence, that conviction that I truly can find all the answers within. And I don't have to always question and go outside of me. And it's just like, when we're noticing that we're being called to do that, trust that. Really trust that that's where you're being guided to go. Because I will say it builds that's where we start to receive, or that's where we can really build true alignment in our life, true knowing of who we are, conviction in who we are, in our path. And the less we start kind of looking at, well, what's this person doing, or just getting distracted by other people's journeys, that's where that comes from. It doesn't come from always outwardly sourcing or outsourcing, actually. It actually comes from that inward journey that I think we so often kind of resist and try to avoid. But it's so necessary. You said it at the very beginning that in life, in business, we're always going to we're cyclical. And so we're always going to experience that. It's not that going to be that, oh, I'm going to have an inward journey for 2 years and I'm never going to go inward. Absolutely not. Because I know it's going to happen again, like it's going to happen. We're going to experience that. And that's all growth and transformation.
It hits. It's It hits. It's life. It's like this forever. It's humbling and it's humility in life of like, I'm not above. And this is why I hate this ego, this teacher student, this unhealthy dynamics, even in conversation where it's one person's the expert, the other's not, because no, we're all mirrors for each other. And it's having that humility to be able to see that, and having why I like to liken it, at least when I work with couples or leaders in the corporate world, to the energetics, is because it's learning even in conversation. How do I maintain that assertiveness of expressing my ideas, my views, my opinions on the world, but also having that balance of that feminine, that curiosity? Let me also learn something from you, other person here. What are your thoughts on that? How have you navigated that? Tell me about your journey, because we are all sources of wisdom within. And this is how we empower the collective and uplift the frequency of our world, is through that empowerment. Like, yes, amen, Ashley Ann, to not outsourcing to millions of
Yes.
coaches, or even like not coaching your clients. If you're a coach listening, don't coach your clients from a place of like, I have all the answers. Like, how do you empower them to come up with their own truths through your skillful questioning, through your sharing of your own humanity?
Yes. I love how one question takes us on a full blown riff. So good. So good. I do have more questions for you too, and we'll see where we go with them. I feel like, where do we go, or where can we start to see when we're kind of operating from, I guess, like the wounded masculine or a wounded feminine? I'll leave it with that. Like, how can we start to notice that? And not from a place, maybe you'll say this anyways, but not from a place of judgment, but from a place of curiosity, of compassion, of grace. Where do we start to see those signs? Or yeah,
Love that you served it up this way, with from a place of compassion and grace, because I got into this work of working with my own masculine, healing my own relationship to the masculine, to the early masculine figure in my life, aka my father, to my own inner masculine, because of an experience I had where I won't share the whole story. An experience I had that was a tremendous mirror of seeing all the aspects of him that I've resented my whole life. That I had look at him with disgust for certain ways of being, expectations around him as a father, of how he could have shown up for me and didn't give me what I needed at this time. And why couldn't he be a bigger person, better person? But you know what? What I realized is this: all the aspects within him, I have within me. Like, we are mirrors. There are times where I don't have energy to give to other people. There are times when, and not to say he's like this in all of these ways. Yeah. We're ever evolving beings. We've changed, but like wounded masculine qualities of like, I enjoy dominance at times. I can penetrate someone with my energy. I can overpower someone when I'm in a conflict, right? And these are aspects of the wounded masculine. I have that within me. And when we start to see the mirrors, we can't project on anyone else, because it's understanding we're all a product of the system. And it's not blaming gender, man versus woman, gender nonconforming individuals. I speak sometimes in men versus women because it's easier to understand the energies.
yeah,
But then it's not blaming you as a man to provide safety for me when I don't provide it for myself. It's not expecting you as a man to hold me with presence because I don't hold myself with presence. And I don't give you presence, because we all want that. We all want to be held. We all want to be ravished. We all want to be on the other end of our partner's desire, right? We all want to be expressed. And so it's understanding that we all crave freedom. Freedom is a quality of the masculine. Yet, given many societal structures, it's impacted gender dynamics and how we handle the family unit and birth control. And those dynamics impact this dynamic of the woman clinging for safety and security and the man desiring more freedom. But in our being as beings, in our nature, we all desire freedom. We all desire novelty. We all desire connection. And so it's reprogramming that and seeing the mirrors and healing these aspects of projection, of expectation, and instead also looking at these early figures in our life as human beings. They did the best they can and they learned from the system, because if they show up this way as a parent, chances are they received that when they were a child. And it's like having compassion for that and gratitude for that because all of this makes us stronger,
Yeah.
and it's an opportunity to overcome.
Yeah. Oh, I resonate so much, and it can be a little confronting at times. I think, at least for me, when for me and my dad, it's like seeing his stubbornness and that like inability to hear and listen, and just knowing when at times it's funny because all my life it's like, "You're just like your mom. You look just like your mom." So I was always so deeply proud of that, especially growing up in a single, my mom raised me. And so it was such a deep pride of, I'm like my mother and I'm not like my father. And yet coming to this confronting realization of, wow, I have his stubbornness. And just it's just interesting to see when that comes out in my relationship and in my partnership. And yeah, and just to also be able to kind of like reframe that and be able to catch it as well at the same time. And I think I've always said, with awareness comes so much power. When we start to recognize and we start to bring into light the shadows that are part of us, the narratives, maybe the qualities that are coming from the wounded masculine or the wounded feminine. When we bring them to the light with awareness comes so much power. That, again, not judgment, not to shame ourselves, not to blame anyone, but from a place of compassion and grace, and being able to like shift that into love, and just also shift that into being able to simply say I'm sorry and course correcting. And I find that that is such a beautiful thing to bring, at least in like relationship is such a big part of our lives. We are in relationships in all
Yeah.
different ways, and I'm not just talking about like your intimate partnership. We have relationships all around us. Siblings, if you have siblings, friendships, work dynamic. We're humans. We're wired for connection. It's everywhere. And so in all ways we're going to see these shadows that come up, and also the gifts that come up as well. We're going to see both. And I think
Yeah.
it really comes back to this piece around just seeing everything as like a mirror and a reflection, and not to, again, I have to say it like a million times, just not to shame ourselves, not to guilt ourselves for any of that.
Yeah.
That's where we
Yeah.
go into these downward spirals that don't serve us. They don't serve us. They don't serve anyone when we get into that space.
It's so true. It never helps to go from that place, and the compassion is 100% the way. And it's yes, it's a product of the system. Like, men have been conditioned to reject their emotions. In the industrial revolution, like, women stayed at home, men were working. In the workplace, in the factories. And so, like, this created this dynamic of like separation of like mind, work life versus like familial life, must be hardened, must get everything done, must figure it out, must have all the answers. Like, that impacts how many fathers show up in relationship. That also impacts how many fathers are drained of time and energy because of the pressures to have to produce for the familial dynamic, that they're not there at an emotional level for their children. And so it's like, it's really understanding that, and also understanding the conditioning to help us tune into what's the wounded masculine. It's like the conditioning around control, the conditioning around hyper independence. I have to have it all figured out. I'm not able to show my emotions. Emotion is weakness. Relying on people is weakness. It's the conditioning from our society is framed in this unhealthy masculine lens. And then, to answer your question about the wounded feminine, Ashley Ann, this is when we come from a place of disempowerment. So this would be something like, I'm going to manipulate to get what I want. I'm going to, it's excess manipulation, neediness, shaming, blaming, projecting, you know, I'm going to expect you to do something that I don't do for myself. And I'm going to blame you for it. I'm going to manipulate, or I'm going to guilt you into it. And so it's anything that's not coming from a place of empowerment. And it's like, how do we take our power back? And a true divine feminine, what does that look like in partnership? That's, if something is hurtful, I'm going to assert my masculine and say, this isn't feeling good for me, this kind of relating. And what I'd like is this. And why? Because I think that we'd feel more connected to each other. if we can talk to each other this way, if we can share what's on our mind as it comes up. And then it's like giving your masculine counterpart, the person with more masculine energy, like a chance to rise to meet you
Yeah.
without trying to control, because that's the wounded masculinity. I'm not going to try to control you, partner, or the direction of the relationship or how you're showing up, because I know at the end of the day, I don't actually have control over you. But I'm going to invite you to rise to meet me.
And notice when that invitation, or how that invitation ends up getting received too, because I just noticed that as well. Like, just when you soften, and I don't mean that just as women. When women soften, I mean both parties. When we can lean into both aspects of ourselves, and it goes back to what we were saying in the beginning. Different periods in our life, different aspects or moments will require a little bit more of the masculine coming forward and the feminine coming forward. And I think both become supportive when we're in relationship. When I soften and allow my partner, my husband, to hear me, but also even to like support me in those moments, is a beautiful way for him to also be seen as well. Like, it's, especially him, like, he in human design, I don't know if you're familiar with human design, but he's a projector. And so for him, he has, I know for him, like, a big thing is around being seen. And so when I let him in and I soften and I don't try and be hyper independent and try and like figure everything out by myself, and I go to him, I notice the difference that it brings in our relationship, and also simply, hey, when you are like, I think it's typical, or maybe typical conditioning around the man just like taking care of things, even when it comes to like financially. It's just they run with it. And for me, at one point, it came down to simply vocalizing, like, I want to be involved. I want you to come to me. I want to make this decision together. I want us to be in union when we're making these choices and these decisions. And it's like, what a phenomenal shift that has brought into our relationship, and to empower me as well. Because for so long, even just working on my money stories, it's like there's a lot there, and we have very different energies around money and how we see it and how we were raised around it. And so just being able to vocalize that, and him respecting that and desiring to bring that forward and knowing that I care, has also empowered me. And at the end of the day, because it's like I'm in the conversation, I'm not living the same story of growing up where I wasn't involved in the conversation. And now I'm involved in these conversations, and it's so empowering for me. Yeah.
And this is where relating becomes fun and enriching, not just in romantic relationship, as you said, and I'm aligned to this, every relationship, when it's two people truly relating from choice and empowerment. And my vulnerability in this conversation, like I just had a conversation with another sister as well, and here it's the same
Yeah.
thing. My vulnerability is a choice. Your vulnerability is a choice. How do we allow ourselves to show ourselves? How do we also allow ourselves to ask another for wisdom? But how then does the other have a sensitivity of like, I'm going to instill wisdom, but I'm not going to think I'm better than you, but I'm still going to hold you in your highest as the king, queen, what gender nonconforming individual that you are, And it's like, that is depth. That is intimacy. If you can do that with your friends, you can do that with your partner at work. Like, oh, it feels so good. It feels so good.
And I don't know, what comes to mind too in that moment is just then we get to see how we all start to rise. Like, I know that might sound so cliche to say that, but that's what ends up happening in sisterhoods and brotherhoods and in all different aspects and relationships. And I think this is what's also coming through, is just, this is where we start to impact the lineages. This is where we start to break massive cycles in our lineages for our ancestors and for our descendants. That becomes when we start to, what's coming through is just like getting uncomfortable with this, because it is uncomfortable. It's okay to acknowledge that it's uncomfortable because we aren't necessarily being taught this, or being shown how to do this. And a lot of us that are in the space, maybe the generation that we're in, where we are like very actively wanting to carve a new path, find a new way, and break these cycles. And that means we are kind of looking to our brothers and sisters, maybe not necessarily our parents, depending on that dynamic and that relationship, but we are looking to sisterhood and brotherhood to, I'm getting full body goosebumps too in this moment, because it's just like that's where we all start to rise and we start to carve a new way for our descendants. And again, it's just that's the powerful thing. And at least for me, that's what I'm here for, is this and this work, and why it's so worth the uncomfortable conversations, the the work of like sitting in the unknown, and also like facing the aspects of ourselves that are showing up, that are being projected to us or mirroring to us or being reflected to
Yeah.
us. Like it becomes so worth it to be able to alchemize all of this, because it's all part of this larger picture at play. So much is impacted. It's not just you. It's not just you. We've got we were ready and
That
needed
was
for this conversation.
Yeah. Oh, it's like I'm not gonna even respond. That was so epic. I'm like, it's
Yeah. This is a really powerful conversation, and just one that's so needed. One that's so needed. And I'm so grateful, because I think this is a perfect realization or perfect example of just two human beings, two souls being able to sit here and conversate and riff and come from our different lens and our different perspectives to bring this to those that tune in and listen to it. It's again in some way, shape, or form supporting this bigger mission to serve collective, to break these cycles, to shift, to transform, to support and transmute. And it comes back to collective. It comes back to we're all sisterhood and we're all brotherhood, and that's where we all begin to rise we when we start to see each other, and also when we start to come together to rise and to have these conversations. I've been the person of just like independent, do it yourself, figure it out, and I'm not in that place anymore. It's just
yeah.
that's not the place that I'm at.
I hear you. I came from that too. And I came from like, ooh, I used to be I needed to be the center of attention. I would sit in the center of all my friends. Everyone's attention would always be on me. I would talk more than I ever listened. And it really the point of this is why I also love the communication work, what we're doing, having this amazing conversation where we're listening and building off each other. And then we go on this tangent is because like the point of communication is to how do I pull out? It's not just how do I get my point across. It's how do I also pull out your depth, human being?
Mm,
Like, how do I pull out your depth? How do I also see the mirror through that? And it's like, this is how you expand my mind and I expand yours. Because any relationship that's one sided, if I'm always instilling wisdom with my sisters, with my partner, with my family, like that doesn't feel good. I want to get something back too, nourish my soul, and where it's two people like choosing to relate with each other and add value for each other and be vulnerable with each other, it becomes this amazing enriching experience.
yeah. Oh my goodness. Amen to all of that. I completely agree. When it's so once it's so magical. And I think I experienced this so recently with my dad. It's just noticing in my vulnerability and noticing in me holding that space. Again, how beautiful it is that they get to come in and they get to soften a little bit. And we get to see all these different parts. I think beyond, like underneath, is like staying open, remaining open. Remaining open is like the thing that comes to mind in those moments, is so that they can. Because when we're closed off, no one's going to want to share. No one's going to want to like be in that energy. And so it's just that curiosity of staying open to everything as well. One of the questions that I really wanted us to get to was talk about all of this, but maybe we can just, this will bring us home in this, because this was such a powerful conversation, is about one thing that you really talk about is just how it's essential to kind of heal the masculine, the inner masculine for the feminine, and vice versa. And I'd love for you to share on this.
I will riff on it in a concise way because it's such a deep topic here, but why I'm so passionate about it. Why does one, as a woman, yeah, if you're a woman, you identify as a woman, feminine being, why do you need to heal your masculine to be in your feminine? Because for me, in my own journey, when I didn't heal my relationship with my father, before this time, what I would do is I would project on all my masculine partners. And when take care of me, hold me with safety, hold me with presence. You never see me. You don't understand me because I never felt seen by the masculine. Now, when I started working with cultivating my own inner masculine, I'm going to see myself. I know who I am. I know what I'm about. I know the value I bring to partnership. I know the value I bring to the world, to my clients, whatever it might be. You zoom this out and apply it to whatever context you want to apply it right now, for those of you listening. But it's like when you see yourself and you take care of your own needs, and like, Nicola, you're having a shitty day. What do you need right now? You need a bath. Do you need some love? Do we need to journal? Do you need affirmations? Like when I truly take my own self esteem, my own self worth, needs for validation into my own hands, and I be my own masculine and I hold my own feminine in that way that she needs, that is when I become an amazing partner. That's how you create magnetism in your relationships. That's how you lead with influence in the workplace because I'm coming from this deep place of empowerment. So when I ask for things, I do it in a way that is easeful.
Mm.
So like my feminine can play. So when I have that masculine core, I don't need to assert my boundaries. I don't need to demand my needs be met in partnership because I got that masculine core, that groundedness. Think of it really like a tree, like that nature. So instead, it's like, ooh, babe, when you talk to me like that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't we try that again? Or like, what's going on here? Like, why don't you go do you, take some space, or I need some space. When you're ready, come back. Like, I can speak with ease. My feminine can be soft because she knows that her masculine's got her. You reject me, partner. Maybe I make an attempt at intimacy. You reject me and it hurts. I know my masculine's got me. I know you're okay, Nicola. It doesn't have to impact your worth as a woman, as a sensual being, as a sexual being, because you're good. So just like hold that tension.
Mm.
And then you can play with the rejection. Or maybe you just like sit with it. Maybe you go into your own space for a little, but you don't have to let anyone's response to you dictate how you show up. And how, as a feminine, and this is deep, so I'm just going to close it with this and then go to the masculine real quick. But how, as a feminine being, how can I surrender if I don't know what it feels like to penetrate another and to feel their surrender? When I feel the pleasure that I take in another person's surrender, and this could be penetrate with your energy,
Mhm.
yeah, with your voice, instilling wisdom, having them surrender to their pleasure, your masculine counterpart. If you don't know the pleasure that you take from being in that dominant role, then you're not going to know how important it is for you to truly surrender from a place of genuine relaxation. And you're going to cling to control. And so, like we learn through polarity, you need to know what the other side feels like in order to understand the pleasure that they take to receive.
Mm.
As a masculine being, yeah, you need to heal that relationship to the feminine to truly be in your masculine. Why? Because I can't lead as a man with true presence and true impact when I'm not connected to my heart, when I don't know how to move people emotionally. Otherwise, you're going to be demanding respect, trying to control, right? And that authoritative energy. But when you know how to be soft and move people emotionally and maybe express little nuggets of vulnerability here, that makes a masculine presence truly commanding. That's how you know your partner. Last thing I say is like, that's how you know what your partner feels like. Otherwise, you project onto the feminine.
Yeah.
They're too much. They're too emotional. You're too crazy. You're too wild when you don't know how to nurture your own emotions. And the only way to bridging intimacy and connection is to see, I have that in me.
Yeah. Wow. So powerful in the way that you explain it. At first, I was, yeah, it just like lands in a different way when you, and the thing that really just came through when, as you were saying it, and then you said polarity, and I was like, the duality, right? Like we need that in life as as humans, there's always going to be duality. And I think sometimes it's challenging maybe for us to fully grasp that, seeing that there's, for example, just always life and death. Like there's the one polarity that we're very familiar with, and it's challenging and it's hard. But I think the underlying piece in what you said in all of this is just the we have to understand the other side in order to like fully surrender. That is so powerful, to for us to get curious about, for us to get curious about the sides of us and to create more growth. And this was kind of coming through earlier, is just, even just starting one place in where you're being guided and where your curiosity is piqued through our conversation, where you're feeling guided to go, and just trusting that for those that are tuning in and listening, just not like overwhelm of just, oh my gosh, all this information, but just simply like where you're being guided to go is where you're being guided to go, and really just trusting them.
I love that invitation for everyone listening.
I
And just not like basking in it. There was so much here, so your head may be spinning. I'm sure it is, yeah, and that's totally okay. But just like inviting in what is, and also letting this stuff, these insights from this amazing conversation, will continue to percolate, probably for the rest of the day, like the month, the year, and just like let it come.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much to explore here. Um, and I know, like, if you are in this space of growth and transformation, it's not new to be talking about like the masculine and the feminine, but there's always deeper understanding that we can take ourselves, and when we're ready for it too. I feel like for me, just even just for myself, like I shared recently, like my first book was very much focused on my masculine, and also just like healing the father wound and that side of me. And yet, as I'm transitioning into writing a second book, it's so interesting how it's so much more about like my mother and all of that, and reframing all this. And it's just, there's a different level of just like readiness, and it goes back to what you said about like humbling, how this journey is so humbling, because we're going to be continually evolving, and we're always transforming, and we're always growing, and it's such a beautiful journey to be on. And that's a perspective that I choose to take on, is that it is beautiful. It is such a beautiful journey. And we also get to play along this journey too, because it doesn't always have to be so like dark night of the soul kind of energy, exactly that. We get to, we get to like do all of this beautiful growth and healing through play as well, through exploring all of that. That's like the thing that I like to drive home, is I'm such a playful, loving energy, and I've learned so much through play, not just always having these dark nights of the soul. It's not always that. It's not always that.
Right, preach.
I'm so grateful for this conversation. This was so powerful, and I feel like the just time just flew. Um wow, I'm deeply grateful. And for one last invitation for those that are like tuning into this conversation, I know you and I would both love to just hear, and they can leave a comment of just like what resonated, what landed, maybe what shifted, what aha moment, breakthrough came through for you in our conversation, in our beautifully wild riffs that we had, where we were taken, that was just so divinely guided. But whatever came through for you, we'd love for you to share with us. And again, Nicola, thank you so much for this conversation. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley Ann. This was such a pleasure.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to leave a review and continue the conversation with me over on social media. And we'll see you in the next episode.